So
It's nice. I saw it. Oh, I got the tea in quickly before you went live. I knew
you did. I almost timed it again perfectly. Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another Blether with. It's great to have you along. Already, YouTube is flinging out the comments. Kat just about caught her with a mouth of tea. And welcome back, Kat. You missed a week. We had Davison with far less hair than you.
Wow, far less hair than I last saw Davis. Also, I watched I haven't managed to watch the whole thing yet, but I started watching it the other day. So yeah.
I half expected you to turn up with just a complete skinhead as well.
Well, do you know, it could have nearly happened because I went to get my hair done today and then realised that I was fast running out of time because I had to take my son to work. So I just kind of said to them, can we go a bit faster? I need to leave in like 25 minutes. So because I've got so much hair, I had 3 hairdressers working on me at once, and I had 2 either side blow drying me and straightening my hair just so I could get out on time. It took 3 adult women to make this happen.
Wow.
So yeah, it could have all gone wrong, and I could have been sat here with a big old shiny bald head like an egg. But
Sinead O'Connor or something.
Yeah, luckily that didn't happen though. But no, it's nice to be back. Didn't make it last week, but yeah, great to be back.
Thanks. Well, Tim Powell says hello. He's saying hello to Peter, Mike, and Kat. We've got Dave Fagerson. Good evening, Dave. You are on the Tricara Glengarry 11-year-old. He's sampling tonight.
Nice.
Which is sherry cask. Dave, we've got your most recent Glengarry waiting for you as well. The Finn Thompson bottle is just it's damn good as well. It's a Tokai cask. 12-year-old.
Wow. That's quite the collection of Glengarrys you're getting there, Dave. I'm going to have to come around the house. Get my empty glass and come around and visit.
Frank's got nothing poured yet, but the evening is still young. Good to have you on. Ryan, hello to you. I hope you're well as well. Guys, Dave's the only one so far to let us know what is in his glass, so I would love to know what you're drinking tonight. If anyone is drinking Woven, I'd be doubly excited to know which experience or if it's one of the core ranges you're drinking. I'm lucky enough to have 4 of the bottles here, so I'm gonna go in numerical order. I'm going to start with number 7. So these are we'll talk a lot about Woven tonight, obviously with our guest being the blender. It makes sense that we'll talk about the company and what goes on in these wonderful little drops. Kat, what's in your glass tonight? How are you?
I am on.
You're not on the internet. Is what you're not on. We did have a warning that there you go. You're back.
Well, it's getting on 8 o'clock. Usually 8 o'clock, my internet disappears. But yeah, no, I'm on tea and rubbish internet. It's because of the holidays and everybody's children are home, so my internet will just be. Well, we'll just make the best of it.
That's what we can do. I'll make the best of this. I'll make it up for you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, you're top bloke there. Well done for taking one for the team there.
Looking at me. Ryan is on the Aaron Amarone and the Remnant Renegade.
How did you just pronounce that? Amarone. How?
Sorry. I mean, we haven't all had Italian ex-boyfriends. We don't know. Amarone. Sorry.
Don't think we need to say that one out loud.
Sorry. And the Remnant Renegade from Aaron. We'll move on tonight. So Ryan is having a bit of an Aaron evening. Good to hear. Dominic tried to find his bottles of Woven for this evening, but couldn't find them.
Can't find your bottles. Do you live in like a mansion, Dominic, or
full of bottles? It's like the gingerbread house, but instead of gingerbread, it's made of bottles of whiskey.
Is he like luring in children with booze to try and eat them? That's really inappropriate on both levels.
I hope not. Willis is on the Glenglassaugh Sand End, or Sinine.
Sinine. Lovely. Some good drams to go tonight.
And Tim is on the Circumstance tonight. Awesome. So that is pretty cool. Bailey Bay Yorkshire Day 2023 and Loch Lomond 18 side by side by Bob Sander. Awesome. So lots of different drams being drunk tonight. So while we're talking drams, let's talk more about whiskey. Let's get a guest on. Peter Allison, hopefully, is a click away. Here we go. Good
Hello.
evening, Peter. How are you?
Hi, good, thank you. Kat, have you done something different with your hair?
Funny you should ask.
It looks great.
Thank you. It took a lot of man hours.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Mike going with the cap, that's fair enough.
There's a reason for the cap. It's to stop the hair blowing about in the wind.
Yeah, totally.
So Peter or Pete? What do you prefer?
I normally go by Pete, but if I'm being told off or being formal, then it's Peter. But I think for tonight, you guys can just call me Pete.
Awesome. Well, we'll try not to tell you off tonight.
Yeah, I'm sure you will though at some stage. I'll be on my best
behavior. Thanks very much for coming on. Giving up your time to on a Thursday night to chat whiskey. It looks like you're in a pretty funky little lab there. Is that your blending lab that you're coming from?
Yeah, this is so. So I'm actually in Leith in Edinburgh, and it's where we have our blending lab. So we're not distillers, we're blenders. So we take mature stock from distilleries, not actually just in Scotland, but actually all around the world, and put them together into kind of unique compositions, I suppose, kind of slightly thinking outside the box or trying to push the boundaries a little bit with blending. And this is home really. So it's a very small space and filled up with lots of bottles of various different shapes and sizes and different ages and different profiles. But that's kind of the color palette that I try and make a blend out of. So we receive all of our cask samples here and then make the blend, make the composition, and then send it out to the warehouse who do it at a large scale with all the casks.
That's amazing. You've gone straight into answering like the question that I really wanted to ask you of like, how does the blending process work? And you just like,
oh, right.
I mean, I'm done for the night. I might just sign off.
Yeah. I suppose
did you just like, do you start small and scale up is what I always wondered about. Like you obviously start with like little wee, or maybe you don't. I don't know. I always just wondered what the process was.
I'm taking that we're able to go full geek tonight, right?
Go for it, 100%.
All right,
please
okay,
do. Please
stuff.
do.
Good stuff. I'm happy to hear it. So lock the doors. Like the reality is that we source casks from distilleries, from groups, from brokers, and from sort of importers or distilleries across the world. And generally, we try to, before purchasing a cask, so we try and hand select the casks as much as possible. So try not to look at large parcels of a such and such component and 40,000 liters of it. We try to look at what the casks are that are going, every cask that's going into the blend. So so I try and get samples as much as possible before purchase, and they normally come in sort of 100 or 200 mil sample bottles, and then I build out what I call sort of a proprietary blend, where I'm trying to understand those casks and how they go together to create a component, and then how that component then goes with another one as an A and a B. So if it's a grain that I'm buying, then I'll see how that goes with a couple of different malts, just to be able to get an A-B comparison. And then I build out, and then when we purchase the cask, I get a larger sample, like a 700 mil, that I'm then able to sort of work down to be able to build out an actual experience or a blend that we're working on, to then scale up. So I scale up in a couple of different forms. The first one is, I just do just do sort of 10, 20 mil blends in a glass, just going along a line, trying to understand what the ratios could be. And then I scale it up to 1 liter and 5 liters to understand what the differences are when you bring it from sort of, say, 20 mils to 100 mils to 1 liter to 5 liters. At which point I then kind of pull the trigger and say, well, we're going for it, and we're going to see how this is at 500 liters or 1,000 liters or 10,000 liters, whatever it is. We've never done a 10,000 liter batch, but I can't scale it up too much in the studio, so I take a leap of faith at some stage just to be able to just sort of pull that trigger and actually go ahead with it. But that's kind of the process. And I suppose.
And how much of that process is on nose alone, or do you kind of do the nose and the palate side by side?
Yeah, so I think first of all, like, to sort of I'm not a trained blender. I never have been. I started in bars sort of back in the early mid 2000s, and then moved into the sort of the whiskey sales and marketing side of things for a long time. I was at Gonzalez Bias, which is a sherry producer, and then into.
Is it not the biggest sherry producer in?
Yeah. It's so Tio Pepe is their big brand, and sort of one of the sort of the I guess of the classic 7 wines of the world. So Tio Pepe is quite huge, and I was very lucky enough to be able to sort of learn a lot about the winemaking process and about sort of sherry and its characteristics and how that goes with whiskey quite well from them. But that was sort of by proxy. I was whenever I could manage to get into the labs, I was learning, as opposed to sort of on an apprenticeship or anything. But when we started Woven, it was me, Duncan, and Nick. So we're old friends. We've been friends since being in the bars in 2005-06. Duncan was the cool cat who got all the tips. I was Edinburgh's slowest bartender, and Nick was this crazy Kiwi that came across to learn about Scotch. And we all ended up
slowest bartender.
Yeah. I was far too into trying to make something balanced than making it in a timely manner for a customer. I wanted it to taste right. It's still an issue I've got now.
The race, right?
Yeah, it's still definitely an issue I have now, because we've got releases that have to come out, and I'm going, no, it's not quite right. It has to be done correctly. But yeah, we've been pals for a long time, and we were the 3 guys that after a shift would kind of get a whiskey instead of getting a vodka Diet Coke, pull our tips and try something different, either a single malt that we'd been talking about, or that a customer had bought and they said it was nice. Then we'd kind of be like, oh, why did they like it? And kind of that threaded the needle for the rest of our careers. Nick went to Morrison Bowmore and did import and export across the Nordics, and Duncan went to William Grant's and sort of built Hendrix and that program out over the last decade. And we found ourselves working all together actually at Atom Brands, which is boutique whiskey and master of malt. And at that stage, we had been talking about bringing blending back to Leith for about a decade. And I went on a business trip to Canada and wrote a business plan sort of on a cancelled flight. I got Fisher Price my first business plan, or whatever it was, and put in all the numbers and made it to £1 million in 10 minutes by putting in about minimal effort, maximum output.
Everyone's done that, haven't they?
Yeah, absolutely. It's how to dream, right? It's my version of looking at Rightmove. Is writing a business plan for something crazy. But that graph gave us sort of the confidence to have a meeting about, if we were to do it, what would that look like? How would we do it? And the idea of doing craft blending was really exciting for us because in our minds, and I say then because now I know that it's different, but then we were sort of doing our research and looking at pretty much a very, very small number of blenders that were doing it differently, and the big one was Compass Box, and Compass Box, there was a real jaw-dropping moment when we realized that they had celebrated their 20th year and they were still the young upstarts.
I always think of Compass Box as still this new pioneering kind of company, don't you? You think, but 20.
And they are in the grand scheme of whiskey, they are absolutely the new young upstarts. Like 20 years is nothing; it's a blink of an eye when you consider, the sort of the
longevity of it.
So, but we thought there's got to be room within that subsect for a small independent blending house that's really going to try and do it differently and sort of hand select casks, look at different production methods, try and bring back the artistry that's been lost, and try to be forward thinking and try to push the envelope in terms of what we could do. So that was kind of it. And then we put our life savings together, had enough money to buy a small amount of whiskey, but also our branding as well. We worked with a design a creative agency called Freitag Anderson to build out our brand world with Duncan and sort of at the helm. And we didn't have any money for a blender, So which was a bit silly, but
starting up a company dedicated to blending whiskey without a blender is a pretty bold move. That
well, there was a bit of naivety definitely there, but there was also sort of that. I think that the naivety sort of breeds confidence as well. So you think, well, we just have to make it taste yummy, right? That's the word. Like if it's yummy, then it'll be fine. That'll be all right. So we kind of I quite like I've got one of those heads that I quite like puzzles and sort of figuring out how to do things. So I worked quite a lot on how to mitigate mistakes, and for me that was building out grid systems of pairings of flavors to be able to get to the right outcome and let the whiskey sort of lead me initially. Nowadays it's a bit different, but at the beginning it was all about sort of being able to build out this grid of grain and malt whiskies of different combinations, different ratios, to understand sort of objectively is one more textural than another, in which case that one gets put into this has more texture, therefore that's going to be a bit nicer than the next one, or is adding 10% more of grain X going to make it imbalanced, in which case take it out. Not looking at any names, ages, even sort of the profile really, but just trying to go on three pieces, which was texture. Flavor follows texture is sort of a philosophy that we hold dear. Clarity. We want all of our whiskies to have a very clear point within them that you're able to taste and objectively agree on. This is this has a real peachy taste to it, for example, and you go, yeah, it does, and then the person beside you can hopefully say, yeah, I agree with that. And the third piece is balance, which is really important. If I'm blending 5, 6, 7 whiskeys together, I want them all to work together. And so you're not tasting 5 whiskeys competing. I want to taste one whiskey in the glass that tastes greater than the sum of its parts. Sorry, you said about Blether. I'm just hogging.
No,
the guys don't listen to us. Let's be honest. They're not here for us. They're here for you. So
we talk absolute shite most of the time. So yeah, no. It's really you go on. Sorry, go on, Mike.
No, you ladies first.
Yeah, you're just saying that because people are watching. It was just more on. So you're talking about you're doing this blind. So obviously you're looking for these key compounds, like almost like starting blocks, or that you're maybe building a foundation with.
Yeah.
A lot of these things you would find by knowing like distillation practices of some distilleries. You know, if you want that heavy mouth feel, you're maybe looking at like I don't know, like floor malting or like worm tubs, whatever. You know, certain flavors or esters and stuff you're getting. But if you're doing that blind, are you just slowly looking for that on the palate and then kind of building round about that? Is that like a harder way of doing it, giving yourself less information?
I think that I've built out some shorthand now. Sort of 3.5, 4 years into it, I kind of built out a sort of an understanding that so I know that when I'm looking for a certain aspect, then I can draw on a couple of profiles that we have to hand. And it's a really good, it's a cool question, because I think that I've been on such a sort of a oh God, I hate saying it. I've been on a journey with it.
We love a whiskey journey.
We do.
I've definitely been on a sort of a. I've learned a lot. So from those first 4 blends. So when we started, it was going to be a side hustle. It was going to be a 1,000 bottles. Let's see if we can get them out, split into 4 whiskeys. We call them experiences because I want to try and capture an idea, a memory, a place, an emotion in a glass as a starting point, so that when you drink it, you're getting that starting point that isn't your end point, but is our end point, as it were. And so the initial run was really just a grid of, we had 3 grain whiskies and 5 malts. We had a sort of a very old in 1974 Invergordon, 1990, I can't remember now, 1990 something in Invergordon, and a sort of a 2006-7 Garvin, and then we had some Tobermory. Actually, I don't know allowed to say all of them, but we had some bits and pieces. This isn't televised, is it? That's fine. Well, we had a sort of a worm tub Speyside that was in an octave, and we had a blended malt from Campbelltown as well, and then an Isla single malt that was in sherry. So we sort of had I like to think that we had some really beautiful jigsaw pieces, and depending on how you put them together, you were able to create a couple of different pictures from them. But trying to find that out, for me, when I first got the very first set of whiskies, I thought, oh well, I want to make a smoky whiskey, so that's going to be the base, and then we'll go from there. And now, when I look at something like an Isla Peat, it's a really interesting profile to play with and to blend with, because it's almost like adding an anise to any food that you're cooking. You know that it's going to be prominent. You know that it's going to be at the fore, so you don't add it in at the beginning. You cook your dish and then you add it in as almost as it were, a seasoning. Like I don't know if my analogy is going well, but I tend to blend out the profile of a blend and then start playing with the peated elements at the sort of the back end of the process, to be able to get the balance right. It's one of those pieces that you don't want to. I think that I'm using Isla as an example, but this could be anything that you want. If you look at something like sherry, then you've got tannins and you got spice, which can be quite spiky on the palate. And I want things to be balanced. I want to remove a lot of the spikes to be able to have something rounded and sort of full in the mouth. Sure. And so, if I use the peated example, then I do think that as a single malt distillery, if you're playing with peat, then it's so hard to get the balance. You're playing with a 10-year gamble to understand if you've got that balance correct. And And there's a lot of skill and there's so much attention put into it that at the end of those years, you then are able to blend through different profiles to make your single malt perfect. And a lot of people do that, but you can still get very unbalanced whiskies coming out of I'm not picking on anybody. I sound like I am, but balance is a really important thing. It's very difficult as a single malt distillery to achieve that balance. But as a blender, I'm able to experiment by playing with.
Yeah, I guess you don't have to wait that. You don't have to wait that 10 years or so.
No,
these guys have done that work almost for you, whereas you can pour a little bit. If it doesn't work, okay, it's a little bit. It's not a full cask. You've got that.
It's exactly that. I can
benefit, but
like
the tools are made for you, I guess.
I think that blending is actually the most creative art in whiskey, if I'm honest with you, because I'm able to build out a new profile of whiskey 10 times in a day. And if I was a distillery, you're trying to create the most perfect single pigment, and that's going to be beautiful, and that's an amazing thing. And I would love, I'm in awe of that. I really am. But I'm able to use those pigments to be able to create something that shines around it, 10 times a day. And some of them won't work and some of them will. And that's sort of the piece that I really, really love about the job is being able to have an idea and then be able to try and take a blend from zero to completion. Zero. Who says that? I can make a whiskey that hopefully tastes like what I want it to, which is why, I think with Woven, a lot of the job, well, actually, no, the whole job is to tell the story of the whiskies inside the blend, as opposed to, and the people and the distilleries and the processes and all this wonderful thing, and to bring people into our whole world, into our whiskey world through sort of sharing the stories and what goes into our product.
I love the idea of blending being like art. I've just got this amazing image of you with all like you sort of like your palette, and every single distillery is like a different color, like a paint by numbers, and you just made this beautiful story at the end of it. It's such a beautiful analogy, but I've never heard anybody describe it like that. Well, yeah, I mean, we could go to that extreme if you want to build on that imagery, but it's such a lovely way of describing it. I've never really heard anybody describe a blended whiskey like that before, but yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
I think it's well, I do spend a lot of time thinking about it as well.
I guess I could put when I'm doing a tasting or doing a talk on it. For me, the distillation, everything up to maturation is kind of the science, and then the art comes in the maturation and the blending. Especially when it comes to something like a Johnny Walker, a famous grouse, something that has to be as consistent as it possibly can.
Yeah.
But using different materials every single batch, that is an incredible art and talent. That
in itself is unreal, right? I mean, I was speaking to someone who works for one of those household names, and I was saying, I was trying to be a little bit provocative and say, how much do you actually dial it in? I mean, do you just have a spreadsheet and go, well, we need six of that, 4 of this, 9 of that, and 30 of this one? And he was saying, no, it's pretty much the opposite. We have a team of I don't know how many people. They've got quite a large team, and they go through over 1,000 sensory checks for every batch that goes out.
Wow.
So there's 1,000 touch points where somebody is checking to see the quality of it going out and see if it is in line with what their expectations of the quality, the consistency, and the flavor profile, and the aroma profile, and the color and everything around it. With every batch that they do in there, and they're throwing out batches every week, every couple of weeks. So, you're talking about people doing sensory analysis on upwards of 90,000 casks individually spread across a team, and then you multiply that by a team of 4, 5, 6 people. Then you've got what's going into then you got the blend and everything. Like it's an absolutely insane thing that they do. And so
what an operation. And you say this is one of the household kind of names. So this is something that we're probably buying off a supermarket shelf for
25 quid.
Yeah. Yeah. But the work that goes into that and the quality that goes into that is probably overlooked by
completely overlooked. And I think that blends sort of the household supermarket bottom shelf, or not bottom shelf, but supermarket mainstream are the quality is generally very high for the amount of money that you're spending. If you think about sort of flavor, texture, aroma divided by price, or whatever you want to do in terms of to get your quality versus price ratio. Yeah. They're pretty darn high, but I think that there is a homogenization of flavor and profile within them that means that there is a slightly it's one whiskey to please them all. So it's sort of it's generally acceptable as whiskey to everybody. That's fine. But it's never going to have the complexity and interest and buoyancy that you can get when you start to drill into sort of doing it at a small scale or even a medium scale, because at the end of the day that they're working on margins that are very low, so they have to get the volume out there, and the volume comes from having that consistency and having that flavor profile that means that it's great with a in a half and half of the pint of Tennent's for 65% of the population. The 45% are the people that are relatively engaged with whiskey to the point where they try to explore outside of that one bottle, but that bottle is for the 65% people who would go, that's mine and that's what I drink.
Yeah, you see that in the bars, especially like your kind of boozers, your traditional pubs and that.
Aye.
Is you'll have your group of guys and they'll come in every tea time. One will be a White Mackay man, one will be a Grouse man, one will be a Isla Skye, and that's it. If you get them drinks mixed up, you know about it because they are so loyal to their Grouse, for example.
Absolutely.
Nothing else will do. You try and offer them a single malt. No, I'm a Grouse, and that's it. These guys have got such that just ingrained in them, whereas a single malt person is probably looking for that change nearly every time. They'll have a couple of go-tos where they go into a bar, it's like, what we're having today? Give me 10 minutes to decide. Let's look at your range. If you've got a whiskey menu, I don't know what I'm for. And the almost shotgun approach, looking for something different every time, aren't they?
It's fun. Not funny, but you're right. You're absolutely spot on. But it's not just in whiskey now. I mean, like, I'm about to admit something that I don't think I've ever admitted before, in terms of in a forum. But I'm quite into my really wanky coffees now. I don't know what happened. I've reached my late 30s, and I haven't taken up cycling yet, but I am looking at bikes. And I like specialist coffee, and I don't know what's wrong with me. It just happened. But I think that
it's fine.
It's a safe space. It's okay. Good. I'm glad.
You'll be wearing a flat cap in no time.
Absolutely. I've got a teeny weeny beanie that I wear quite often. Doesn't cover my ears. Has no practical consequences, but still do it.
Just looks good.
And a chore jacket always. But see what I really love about this third wave coffee movement is that you're able to come into it as a novice, and you're given the information like you're not a novice. You're told that this is a washed Colombian natural fermentation blah 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 blah. I don't actually know all the terms, so I'm sort of making up a little bit. But you're able to get this information, and then you're able to make the decision of, oh, I like that because it tastes a bit like this, or it's got a bit more fruity characteristic. And then you're able to go to a coffee shop again and be like, oh, I like that one, so I'm going to like this one. And I think that whiskey's a bit like that. You know, people get engaged with it, and I'm seeing that, like, you see it with wine, but that's a bit old school. You see it with whiskey, and like, you know, there's definitely a recruitment problem with whiskey, in that there's quite a barrier. But
Yeah.
I think that with Woven, what we want to do is we want to try and bring people into it and give them all the information that they want and could have, but try not to be jarring with it, try not to be exclusive with it, try not to be sort of have too much ownership of the process, and give it to them as we're blending cool stuff together to make it nice for you, you know?
Yeah. So it's like a Nescafe and Maxwell House. These are the kind of the households.
That's what I'm into. Aye.
That's your Grouse and your White Mackay and these kind of guys that, like you say, 65% of the houses are happy with, and then you have those other ones that.
But
like
it's the
specific way, ground coffee and roasted coffee.
But nobody's getting into coffee through Maxwell House, really. It's a functional thing. Maybe they are. Maybe my analogy's shit. I don't know. It probably is. But
I think you're probably right. And maybe we do a business meeting every Wednesday morning, and the coffee that they provide us is terrible. But we drink it anyway because that's what is there. But this lad came along, and he's so it's a business meeting, but he's a coffee roaster. He does his own roasting, and he took samples with him, Benny coffee, and he took his own samples, and we like grabbed a couple and had that instead of the stuff we were getting at the meeting. I was like, this is amazing. This is so much better than what we were used to. Is it? You need to join our group and just bring free coffee. That's your fee. I think there's definitely.
I did a coffee. Have you ever heard of something called cupping? I mean, without sounding, I realize what trap I'm going down there, but coffee cupping is when they sort of do. It's like a tasting, but they do it with spoons, and they sort of slurp in a really weird way, and it's kind of a bit odd, a bit sort of a bit like a cult, but it's fantastic. And they talk about flavor in a way that I talk about flavor, and I loved it. It was a really exciting thing to be able to sort of share that with them. So now I sort of have a little chat with a coffee roaster to understand sort of what they're getting from my blends as well. So I've gone far too down the rabbit hole in terms of coffee, but I think it's such a great recruiter for a brand like Woven to be able to look to bring people into to our world.
I think the fact that you're so transparent about what goes into your whiskey, because a lot of the times, and I'm really rubbish at it, Mike always knows their names, but like you kind of read, you know, when you're not meant to say who the actual whiskey is, and they get given like a nickname. You always know them, Mike, and I never remember them and stuff. And sometimes like a lot of that still makes it a little bit unapproachable, but like you go on your website's written beautifully, by the way. You could just get lost. It's like somebody's inside of somebody's journal. I love journaling, by the way. I relax by watching journaling on YouTube. It's really sad.
Do you have a bullet journal?
No, mine's more just like inside of my head's really random, so my journal is quite random. I don't think anybody should ever look inside my journal, because
you should totally publish that.
I don't think we should. But yeah, so I love the way your website's written, but it just makes everything really approachable, because you're like, you know, if you're new to whiskey, or like, you know, you're getting into it, and you can just find out, oh yeah, like this one's like really cool because it's got like a bit of Speyside, and it's like, oh, a bit of New Zealand. Straight away when I saw your Hemispheres one, I was like, well, that's my whiskey. I'm half Kiwi, half Scottish. I want it. But like, it's as simple as that, isn't it? Like, if that's what it takes for somebody to like find you and understand you, then like that's a great entry for a lot of people.
So I mean, our branding, you know, our bottles are pretty different from the standard whiskey
awesome.
bottle, and you know, I studied sort of sculpture and art at uni, and Duncan studied philosophy and socio. I can't remember what he studied, but you know, he sort of studied the humanitarians, and as did Nick. None of us are sort of from a science background, and none of us have sort of a group of friends. Our groups of friends are all sort of chefs, perfumers, designers, graphic designers, writers, like just, cool cats that do stuff. Cool cats. I'm not one. But for us, we're never often sipping in a bothy with a deer and a dog and that sort of thing. So we wanted to create a brand that spoke to us and spoke to our friend group, and was more design led, more minimal in its aesthetic, but functional. It had to have that tactile aesthetic, tactile feel, utilitarian aesthetic. But if you want to know about Woven, then you're able to find out about it. So the website was really important to us, as is sort of being able to release as much information and write essays about each blend and about why we did it, how we did it, what went wrong with it, how many attempts it took, and sort of the bit of philosophy and bit of thinking that we tried to put into every bottle that we put out. So you're able to go as deep as you can in a whiskey company through us, but we're still going to have a minimal and tactile aesthetic that doesn't necessarily so it invites people in, and you're able to go further, as opposed to being a sort of a luxury with a capital LUX brand, where you sort of, my interpretation of it is that it can be a slightly inhibiting for people to pick it up, because if you don't know much about whiskey, then it's unlikely that you're going to pick up something that you think is intimidating or rare, or you think is going to be really expensive, or you think is going to be sort of this scary thing. Like, what if you get it wrong? It's an investment. Yeah. So we wanted our bottles to be sort of in the sort of the same line as something like Aesop, that's really beautiful, or Le Labo, and something that's beautiful, tactile, utilitarian, but you're able to get all the information that you possibly want. So we do try and be as transparent as we can with everything. There are things we're not allowed to be transparent with. When we purchase a cask of whiskey, where we sometimes get it for a little bit, we either can't get hold of it as a named product, or it's we're a business, so it's sometimes a little bit cheaper if it's an unnamed Speyside whiskey.
Okay.
We might know what it is, but we're not allowed to say what it is, or it's a blended malt, or it's a teaspooned malt, or something like that. And that's the beauty of what we do, is that we are blenders and we are non-age statements. So we're not actually too fussed about the prestige of the components going into it. What we are interested in is the quality of what's going into it. So
have you ever come across a cask or bought a cask that you're like, wow, we've managed to get a hold of this
proper worldy
at this age that you can't believe you're getting to work with, but you're quite happy to put that into blend, where maybe as a single cask it's...
Yeah, I mean, there's some amazing blending malts, but I doubt they're sexy. I don't think that they're sort of the ones that you'd be like, oh, you're blending a 1940s Springbank. Like, it's unlikely that we're going to be doing that. But being able to buy even something like Ben Nevis, which has a really interesting profile and goes a long way in a blend, is great, or a Klein Leash or something, which has that real waxy element to it. But I'm sitting here actually with you were saying about what you guys were drinking earlier, and I've got a cask sample of a 2009 Port Dundas in an Oloroso hoggy.
It looks like a rosy wine or something.
Yeah, 61% ABV, closed distillery. Stunning. It's so floral, We're going to be using that sparingly. I think, coming up. But I think, I mean, my sort of interpretation of it is that there's incredible whiskey distilleries, and everybody's making amazing stuff. It's just trying to find the right age and the right profile that's going to suit us as a blender. And I think that the biggest sort of learning that we've had is that all the whiskey drinking countries are now making exceptional whiskies. So we're big on blending across borders now. And you mentioned Hemispheres, Kat, which is a really exciting project that we've done over the last 18 months, which was to work with a New Zealand-based distillery out of Auckland, Thompson Distillery, husband and wife team, really small but exquisite in what they're making. But they smoke the single malt that we buy from them, and they're now producing it for us as well, is they smoke their malt with Manuka wood. So, you know, the Manuka honey, you guys might be familiar with. It's a sort of a cure-all honey from New Zealand. So it cures a cold, but it also cures a broken leg, I think. I'm not too sure what else, but it's incredible. It's very expensive honey. You can get it at Holland and Barrett. It tastes great. But the Manuka tree that makes the blossom that the bees get is this super. It's almost like a gorse bush, you know. It's got these really spindly, dense, resinous twigs, and it burns like an incense. And so, instead of getting an earthy peat smoke, we're able to get a very clean, honeyed, sweet smoke that's almost like clove oil and orange oil from the Manuka wood. That it's a profile that you could not get in Scotland. And so we look for distilleries that are able to produce profiles that just can't be got in Scotland and bring them over here to be able to blend into something unique and really interesting and exciting. So Hemispheres has done really well because we're blending it. It's the Manuka smoked single malt from New Zealand plus a single grain from Scotland. It's just a 2-part blend, a really minimalist blend. So I like the idea of being able to bring 2 or 3, you know, a small number of whiskies into a glass to be able to taste something that absolutely slaps and is awesome.
So do they release that as like part of a core range, or is that like a limited? It's like, are you gonna be limited to how much of that you can get? Is like, do they produce that all the time? So
they release it as a limited edition. We release it as part of our core range, actually. So we've, I mean, not how the sausage is made, but we now have a filling agreement with them that means that they're filling on our behalf, and so we're able to backfill, or we're able to sort of plan for the future a little bit as we scale, and they're scaling that production as well. So it's not part of it is part of their. I'd have to come back to you and find out if it's part of their core range actually now, because it is fantastic. It's amazing.
This is me just double checking that whether I should just be like order my bottle just now while you're talking, or whether I'll just wait till after we're finished. Because I really wanted to get.
I think everybody should buy a couple of bottles, maybe a pallet or so.
You heard him, guys. You better get on it.
Get clicking. Get clicking.
A couple of pallets each. I've just seen actually in the chat there, the Woven bottles are 500. They were.
Yeah. I had to answer that because I thought that we were seeing a change.
Yeah. But look at the size difference.
Oh, wow. It's like me next to my 17-year-old son. That's awesome.
So we've just moved into 700ml bottles as of sort of about 2 months ago, with our core range. So homemade Hemispheres and Super Blend, which are all fantastic. And yeah, so we're now in 700s, and we're going to be bottling our future releases into 700s as well. The reason why we're in 500ml bottles is actually the bottle itself. So, as I said, we sort of put in our savings to do the brand, but we had to get an off-the-shelf bottle, and And so you would either go bespoke, which means sort of getting something really beautiful and fancy and costs a hell of a lot of money, or you can get an off-the-shelf bottle, which means that you're sort of putting your branding on something that already exists. We chose the latter, but we went to a pharmaceutical supplier that make this Boston Round bottle, which is frosted amber glass. It's actually the most common bottle in the world. It's used in pharmaceuticals all over the world, but they only make it in 1 liter, 500 mils, or 100 mils. So we made the decision to go with a 500 ml bottle for our initial releases because we wanted to get as much whiskey out there as possible in terms of, actual number of bottles. But we also fell in love with the bottle itself. So now we've made our own one. We had to make specially in 700 ml just for our. Yeah,
I love your bottle, and it reminded me of I used to live on the West Coast. I used to love going to look for sea glass, and it reminds me of just because you're based in Leith. It just reminds me of all kind of walking down by the port, just finding bits of old bottles that have come off of ships coming across from Jerez or something. I just thought it was really cool. Really cool.
I love that. I go and collect sea glass with my daughter. We live next to the sea out in East Lothian, so we go and collect sea glass.
Now, what do you get most excited about? What color? Because I think I used to get really excited if I found a really dark blue one or one with writing on it. Have you got one in particular that you always? Because it's usually white or green that you usually see, isn't it? But
yeah, but blue's the best.
Blue is the best to get really.
Amber
excited.
glass is the best for housing woven and contemporary bottles and everything. Don't get me wrong, but finding blue sea glass is that's elite status. And if you find blue with some writing on it, that's writing home to mum.
So there is. There's a guide. I think she sometimes watches. Well, she's not a guide anymore. Actually, she moved into production. She works over at Lochranza on Arran. And I've only just discovered through her Instagram that she is obsessed by sea glass, and people can actually geek out in it because you can trace back to when it was probably produced, what kind of point in time and stuff, and what kind of liquid it housed. I'm all over that. I could just go to the extreme with my sea glass collection. I think
historical booze investigations. That'd be something that I would love to do, yes. Or maybe not to do. Love to tune into somebody else doing.
Yeah. Well, you're in the hub of sort of blended whiskey history, being based in Leith as well. And the more I look into it, the more amazed I am by just how much history is there too.
We are, and it's amazing here. So Leith, the old trading port of Edinburgh, it's where sherry, port, wine, brandy, rum would all come into Scotland and whiskey would leave. And so because the distilleries were so spread out and so remote, a lot of the casks would be consolidated in Edinburgh in order to be the closest to the port. So when it needed to go out, it could. And with the advent of blending, it made sense that blending would sort of concentrate around a port, and Edinburgh specifically, because you had all of these wine casks coming in, so they were able to mature or to marry or to blend into these large port pipes or sherry butts that were coming in, and it gave a little bit more flavor or whatever it was. There are cooperages round the corner from us, and the building that I'm in. We're next door to the old Hague distillery, so cool. and the Patterson brothers warehouses. So the big Patterson crash in the 1920s, that sort of brought down a lot of the whiskey industry was kind of, literally out our front door here. And so I love the history of Leith, and if you do find yourself here, there are some fantastic walking tours by Justine, yeah, absolutely. And I would,
awesome.
I have such I was about to say a crush. I have such sort of a admiration for Justine. She has an amazing Instagram and TikTok that she goes around the Leith
graveyards.
graveyards.
Yeah,
And
I
people
love a
used
wee
to
trip
find-
around the graveyard. I take my kids to them. I'm like, right, guys, who can find the oldest stone? They're like, seriously, Mom, this is weird. But like, I
Yeah,
love our
no,
little-
that is a bit weird.
I
Is
mean,
it not?
that's not. It's not full day out, you know. If we're going past fun, like I wouldn't specifically be like, okay, get in the car,
Okay.
graveyard day.
You don't get your special spooky snacks and take everybody to the
We're not-
graveyard for the day.
out, Carrie searches the graveyard. She knows which is the oldest stone, and if the kids don't get it, then they're walking home.
I once
Um,
did that to them in Oban. There's a set of stairs. Oban used to be my closest town. I live in the West Coast, and behind the distillery, there's a set of stairs that goes all the way up to the Folly at McCaig's Tower. Have you guys been to Oban?
I have, yeah. So Daniel Freitag Anderson, who did our bottles, lives in Oban.
Oh, awesome. Well, he'll know
Yeah.
the set of stairs. So you can go up behind the distillery, straight up the staircase, and takes you up to McCaig's Tower. So, like, when I used to go into town to do my shopping on a Tuesday with the kids when they were wee, I noticed one day at the top of the staircase it said somebody had written on like 397 steps. That sounds like a lot. Okay, let's say that's a lot. Okay, let's say 120 steps or something. So I remembered this for next time, and like, because the kids used to complain, like, "Oh, I don't want to go up the stairs again, Mum. We don't need to go to to McCaig's." I'm like, well, you know, if you guess how many steps there are, the person that wins gets a treat. So I'm like, I guess 120. So of course, I already knew.
You are, I mean, that's like pro mumming. That is very, very, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
I just bribe them with like Jaffa cakes and stuff.
I mean, I'm easily bribed with a Jaffa cake too, but you know, I also just really liked going up to see the view from the top. I like, you know, shopping with kids is a lot of hard work. You need something to look forward to at the end. It tired them out too. But I can't remember why I told you that story. I'm so random. Oh, we were talking about Justine, weren't we? Graveyard.
Justine, yeah, graveyards and leaving your kids in the graveyard overnight to count headstones or something.
No, I don't leave them in the graveyard overnight.
Often.
Now and again.
But I know.
I'm going to jump into the guys at home. We've got some questions, and I just want to say a few hello. Hello to Ryan. Ryan's an avid collector of Woven. He's saying the Woven collection is awesome. Very lucky to try so many from Pete. So many different flavors from each, and each with its own story. His favourite was when you said it's bonfire night on a rainy day in Leith, and when he tasted it, he had a little sparkler crackle on his tongue.
That's cute.
Yeah, I think
captured that.
I think that would be Pete versus Pete. So my first whiskey that I made I was getting asked by Duncan and Nick to make a peated whiskey, and really struggled. It was one of those profiles that it was so easy to just miss the mark. And so I went through about 3 months of trying. So I'm normally working on about 4 or 5 different whiskies at a time.
Right.
But number 8, which you have behind you there, actually, it's one of the grey, sort of the sky grey bottle. That was the first one that we made that I was like, I want to make a peated whiskey, you know. And I kept trying to make it. I just struggled until I thought about bonfire night when I was little, you know, and you have wet grass underneath you. You have the smell of sparklers and ash in the air, and you have toffee apples or crispy cakes, and you normally have a feeling of feeling young, secure, excited, and sort of a little bit nervous as well. And I wanted to try and get that in a glass. That was the sort of the thing. And when I figured that out, I was then able to sort of let the whiskey take me to a certain point and try and navigate it the rest of the way towards it. And I reckon that's probably the one that Ryan's mentioned there. And it was good. I love it. It's one of my favorite whiskeys that we've made, but I'm not a peat boy. Really, I find it difficult to to drink a lot of peated whiskies. Although, no, actually, that's such a lie now. My favorite whiskey is a Bowmore 15, so that's total bullshit. But aye, it's all good.
Pete, Pete and Sherry, when you get that right, there's nothing better, is there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. And the guys at Bowmore have nailed it. Eh? I mean, drink Woven, but if you're not, that's all right.
Drink some more. It's fine. Yeah, it's a good one. I've got it on the shelf behind me somewhere.
So Peter, when you were in the bar way back, and you and Nick and Duncan sat after your chef, you were drinking it. You mentioned that it's normally single malts that you would look for, or a whiskey that the customers would kind of enjoy. What point did you start to test grains and think there's something here that we want to work with, not just work with, but really explore? Well,
I mean, the first thing was an actual blend itself, and it was a fun one because we were in the bars at the time when education just started to be invested into the on-trade in Scotland. So I guess leading up to that point, it was all about the Flertinis and Moscow Mules and vodka Diet Coke, nay ice, nay fruit, and whatever else, you know. And for the first time, brands were starting to engage with the bartenders and bring distillers and ambassadors and people into our world and to educate. And we went to a tasting by Dave Broom, you know. He's now a dear friend and absolute legend, but then, well, still what was a legend then, but you know, starstruck legend then. I was like, whoa, it's Dave Broom. And he was doing a vertical of the Diageo single malts. I think one of their Flora and Fauna releases or something like that. And we went through them, and incredible stuff, you know, drinking absolutely unreal whiskies. And he had at the end a bottle in a brown paper bag that was from his own collection that he was going to let us try. And so we were all drinking this incredible whiskey, but really thinking about what's going to be in that brown paper bag, you know. And he poured it, and we were tasting it, going, "Oh, there's peat in there." So I bet you it's a Port Ellen, you know. It's got loads of like fruit, so it's going to be a Speyside. Like it could like, did they ever run peat through more? Like, we don't know. Like, it could be anything. Like, just like totally like fanboying it.
Yeah.
And he pulled it out of the bag, and it was Johnny Black. And we all went, "Oh, you know, you dick, whatever." But it stuck in my head that side by side, a blend can be extraordinarily good. And so I've always had that, and we have as the guys at Woven, and now you asked about grain there, and what was it about grain? And it was really just, you know, I've always blended whiskey for friends and stuff, you know, just as a sort of birthday present, skint, put together whatever whiskeys I have around and give them that. But I love it, and grain has always been that element. And I think that grain is such an under talk. It's not talked about enough as a category. You know, it makes up more than half. Well, way more than half of the whiskey being consumed in the world or Scotch whiskey is Scotch grain, because it's a large component of blend, and blends are 90% of the market still.
Yeah.
And I think that the profile of grains are really interesting because there's such a distinct distillery characteristic for each one, but they're on a spectrum. You know, they're sweet vanilla forward, but you get North British that is like custard cream and brill cream. You get Invergordon that's a bit more like tutti frutti sweets. You get Garvin that's got slight more of a vegetal floral note coming through into it. And then you have the age and the ABV that you put that you mature your grain at as well has a huge influence on it. So you do get these huge variations, and I think that there's a common misconception that more grain equals less texture or less character, but I don't believe that. I think it's about the selection of the casks and about the ratio at what you're blending. So you're able to use quite a lot of grain and still have a very, very beautiful glycerol mouthfeel if you work at it to get the ratios right.
I think there's kind of that common belief that grain it's all about consistency and quantity, and that's it. That's what's there to supply. Whereas, there's much more to it than that now, isn't there? And it is. You're talking about the household blends and how they go through all these quality checks, and instantly I just thought, well, that must just be on the malt. But I guess that all the grain goes through exactly the same process as well.
100%. I mean, I really can't talk for these guys that are doing it, but they are doing QC on all of the casks.
Yeah,
all of them. And I think that what we've learned actually, because I'm is it a cuckoo that steals other people's nests?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I'm not that. I don't know why I said that, but I steal other people's processes and then go, oh, how can we bring that into Woven to sort of layer up our complexities and capabilities? So now what I'm doing is I'm grading all of our casks. A is sort of that's primed and ready to be used. A B can be used, but to a lesser extent. So you want some more A's in there, and then a C you'd be looking to re-rack or to keep for longer in order to see how it gets on. Can't remember why I was saying that, but that's fine. But with grain, we have in our stocks, I think we have about 60% of it would be grains of different ages and styles, sort of in our cask holdings. And I've graded them all and then re-racked some of them and sort of tried to play around with how we're treating our grain, so in order to maximize it. But the malts do have inherently more character and complexity, so I'm more likely to re-rack or closely monitor my malts, but I try to understand what a cask of grain is and what it can be if we were to do something with it, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Has that developed then since your days of beginning to drink whiskey, or have you always had this kind of affinity with grains or blends to a degree, or
with blends? With blends, but I don't think that I really appreciated what went into a blend until I mean
because you worked with a luxury brand, didn't you? You were
I was at the Macallan, so rewind slightly. At Gonzalez Bias, we did a product called Nomad, which is a
what was that, you guys?
Scotch from
matured
Richard
in
Patterson.
Spain, wasn't it?
Yeah, and matured in Jerez. We
used to have that in the shop actually. It went down pretty well because it had a different story about it.
It's great, absolutely fantastic whiskey. It's the casks that they're using are the best casks in the entire industry. Like, I swear down that they're finishing in the 30-year-old PX casks from one of their family Soleras.
Wow.
And it's shit you just don't get. But the whiskey was made together with Richard Patterson and Antonio Flores, the winemaker at Gonzalez Bias, and it was incredible. And that's kind of where I started to unpick blends, because I was the Scotsman working for a Spanish company. I was the sort of the translator, or sort of the conduit, I suppose, between the two entities. So from a practical side, I suppose. But I got to sort of sit with Antonio and Richard to understand what was going in, what was going out, why we were picking these grains, why not, the age of them, the profile. So that was kind of the first iteration of me going. So I'm not saying me. It's not, but I got to learn a little bit about it from them.
That must have been amazing. You must have heard some great conversations between those two.
I mean, Richard can't speak Spanish and Antonio can't speak English, so I heard a lot of awkward silences whilst I tried to remember how to say a certain word.
Brilliant.
But I know it was class, and then I moved to Edrington and the Macallan, and you never talked about grain at all. It wasn't a thing. I went to North British a couple of times and saw the stills, and kind of I was really into it, but it was this thing that was kind of hushed up. Oh, we also have North British. Yeah. But it's cool. These things are amazing. Great. Like, if you go to, I swear that the best distillery in Scotland is Loch Lomond. I'm so sorry, Kat. I know.
The second best distillery.
Second best distillery. No, I just mean in terms of what they're actually doing.
The playground that it is.
The playground that is, and the whiskies that are coming out are very cool from a geeky point of view. But I think that the grain element, and there should be more grain distilleries or more smaller grain distilleries to try and push that. It's difficult to push the boundaries with grain because there's only a couple.
Yeah.
So you sort of go, I've got a grain, and you're like, great, okay, so you got a 68% ABV refill that you're going to have to do something with. Might be at a different age, but you're going to have to do something with it. So, it's an interesting one. I love grain. I think it's an amazing component, and I encourage everybody. If you don't have a single grain in your collection, do pick one up.
Well, North British are cool. They've got a really cool story. Like, they're kind of linked to the whole blending history as well, though, aren't they? Because they're owned by William Sanderson, famously from VAT 69, and he built North British. Well, he founded North British to kind of combat the beast that was DCL, but eventually, obviously, fell into ownership of DCL. I think it was the war that caused the Sandersons to sell, and eventually got amalgamated into the whole DCL stockpile of businesses. And now,
is that right? Oh, I didn't actually know. So bad of me. I used to work for Edrington, but I didn't realize it was the war that set it out, because now it's I don't know if it is a 50-50, but it's a split between Diageo and Edrington that own this central Edinburgh distillery that's churning out. It's something ridiculous, is it 50 million liters LPA a year that they're doing there?
The biggest. Is it Cameron Brigg is 110 million litres? Is the biggest.
I heard that Girvan is going through a bit of a revamp, and they're going to be able to do 250 million LPA a year.
That's nuts.
That's big.
But Girvan is obviously Diageo, so a lot of that will be white spirit as well. That's not just whiskey. Is it?
It's William Grant's, so I think
Grant's, of course. Yeah. So, yeah.
But I think that with these grains at a big level, with the you're talking about Diageo, Grants, Edrington, whatever, they all trade between each other. So although it might be under the ownership of one, it's going to be used by everybody. So the increase of Girvan is going to benefit everybody. I don't know, your Grouse or Johnny Walker or whatever. I don't know, whatever it is.
What do you think of the news that Grants have bought Grouse, the brand?
That's an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, I don't think that I know. I think I know too much gossip and not enough fact. That's my issue. So I'm like, it's part of a deeper thing where Edrington is going to move out of the entire whiskey game, and they're going to sell Macallan to Suntory, and Highland Park is off to Pernod, and all this sort of stuff. And I'm like, I don't know if any of that's true. I've just sort of heard these
a lot
proper gossip mill.
It is. I don't think I've ever heard a story that's caused so many rumors or so much division. For everybody thinks it's awesome. Everybody there's the rest. The conspiracy theories like, oh, there must be something behind that. Why would they do that? But
yeah,
I suppose we'll know.
It will have made sense to people that are CEOs and COOs and CFOs, and it would have made sense at that level, and I think that's it. I don't have a clue why or how or anything. I also don't know how it's going to functionally move. I mean,
yeah.
It's mind blowing because it's a huge. I don't know the volumes of any of these guys really, but it's a big operation.
Somebody said that it would have to go through I don't know enough about it, but it would have to go through a sort of monopolies regulator to see if it was allowed first before it's all confirmed.
Really?
But I'm assuming if it's out there in the press that's happened. I don't suppose it'd be announced.
I heard the same thing. I would say though that Famous Grouse and Naked Malt especially is class. It's so good. The flavor on it, and then I tried the Famous Grouse sherry cask the other day. I think it's at Morrison's, Classy Pete. But it was really good. I was really impressed. And I thought, shit, this is 25 quid.
Yeah.
Drink Woven, please.
Yeah. And I guess that's the problem as well. As we've quite a number of our last few blethers, we've done a lot of talking blends and really bigging them up, and trying to encourage people to try them. And when you talk about that, 25 quid for a bottle of sherry cask grouse, you're kind of are we shouting too loud? Are we for a shop?
No, I don't think so.
Primarily retails blends.
A rising tide lifts all ships, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that blending, if this was sort of a one sentence thing tonight, I'd say that blending is the vessel for creativity, right? Within whiskey, and I genuinely believe that it works at a single malt level where you have the science, as you say, you have the artistry you have the mystery within the maturation, and then you have the artistry in the blend at the other end, and it's trying to tie that chemistry and mystery together into something that is beautiful. And I think that being a blender that's able to work across distilleries and continents is an amazing privilege. But I would encourage people to go back and pick up something that got them into whiskey. I think we all probably started off by stealing a bottle of grouse or something from our dads and hating it.
It was Jameson's for you, wasn't it, Mike? We often start with this story, don't we? But Jameson's for
you. So I guess your version of this was a delayed air flight home from Canada, whereas mine is a broken ice machine. And I used to drink Jameson's whiskey in an Irish bar in Aberdeen, loaded with ice, because I couldn't stand the taste of whiskey. When I started drinking Jameson's, we only drank it because it was Irish and it was an Irish bar. One night we went in and the ice machine had broken, so I had to try it neat room temperature, and I was like, wow, that's actually a lot different to what I remember. As you say, nicking it from Dad's cabinet or whatever and running out of the park. So yeah, if it wasn't for that broken ice machine, I guess I'd still be drinking whiskey chilled or be a rum and coke. Or
do you think you would be? I mean, you're sitting there with one of the greatest whiskey selections.
Yeah, maybe.
Sure, your palate and your led you to it somehow. I'm sure of it. Must have.
Perhaps.
I love it though. But I think, I bought a bottle of Hanky Bannister from the 70s the other day.
The name always makes me smile.
It's so good, but it's pretty much Glenfarclas, and I can't. I don't know what the grain is, to be honest with you, but my goodness me, that was absolutely outstanding. Absolutely outstanding. Justine tried it as well from Justine tried it and she was like, it's great. So I go onto the auction sites, buy old blends, try them, and then also revisit the blends that you don't think that you'd like. But most importantly, always drink lots of Woven.
You might if you kind of have that kind of crossover there. When I talk to people about blends, today's blends, grouse, bells, whatever it is, oh, it's not like it was in the 70s. It's not as good. How much of that is romance? How much of that is nostalgia? Are we seeing blenders using less malt in their blends because single malt market?
Would they not? A lot of them would be produced with like direct firing and floor malting and stuff. So there would have been a different type of quality there back in the 70s, I guess, wouldn't there? Yeah. Production would have been different.
I mean, I think
whiskey is better, so you don't need.
It's a really interesting one to answer.
I guess there's lots of factors coming in, isn't there?
There's a lot of factors. I think that one of them is the romance and scarcity as well of older ones, and the nostalgia piece as well. You know, you remember blends from 20 years ago, 50 years ago, you know, whatever, however old you are. And you remember them differently from what you're able to get now. Then there's the practicality piece where you would have had more malt content. You would have had probably higher ages. The aim of the game was to make the most tasty thing that you could, and you had a lot of whiskey that was very cheap at different ages. And you know, single malts in the 70s were not producing single malt for retail; they were selling it for blending. So it wasn't that there was grading of whiskies, but there wasn't necessarily the aggressive pricing of whiskies. So you were able to go to people like, I don't know, whatever quality Q you want to do, you know. Name your favorite distiller. You're able to go to them and say, you know, I really think that this blend needs some of that 25-year-old. I think it's just going to make it better. Are you able to put that in at the same price because it's going to work? And they'd be able to say yes or negotiate on it. Whereas now, you know, you couldn't go to Springbank and ask for something like that because they just tell you to fuck off. Rightly so, because they're able to get a lot more money. I still think that the best whiskey in the world would be Springbank, Talisker, and Clynelish in a glass.
Blend of the three.
But
oh wow,
you know, one day I'll try and make it. But
what would it be called? I love all the names you give your experiences. So what would the name be for that experience?
Oh, I don't know. It's a good question. Yeah, so
Peach Dragon.
We try and name all of our whiskeys. So our experiences are all around an experience. So like nostalgia or levels or happiness or, you know, joy in nature, synchronicity, awe. Yeah, we try and name that. What would that be called? Something contemplation number 8 or something like. So that would be like something like
They all come from really quite moody, beautiful places. Like they're all kind of. Do you know what? All three of those places are beautiful in their remoteness. Because Sutherland, I used to live up there. I say this every week about every place in Scotland. But
Kaz lived everywhere.
I have lived everywhere. It's one of the most beautiful places I've lived, but one of the most starkly remote and isolated places I've ever lived. And there was a beauty in that, but there was also like a misery in that as well, because you were 2 hours to get to a town, and that town was Thurso, which is a shithole. Sorry if you're from Thurso, but it's not.
Love you guys.
There's a reason you don't live places very long, is it? You just shout them out. This place is a shithole.
Oh, it's probably better. I'm sure it's better now, but you know, they didn't put. I think they didn't put enough money into Thurso when they should have done. So yeah, all those three places are quite stark and beautiful at the same time. So you'd have to come up with.
What was that movie? I think it was Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. It sounds like.
I like that.
You know, I've never watched films, Mike, unless they're a children's film. Over the last 10 years, I've only watched children's films.
There's a sense of place with all them that I really like, and I think that's cool. We if I can't, like, so we've just made our latest experience whiskey, which is sort of these limited edition one-off whiskies, and we're just bottling it. In fact, very, very sneak peek. That's it.
Do they all come in a box now?
No, this one is. It's a very special whiskey. So it's called Friends in the North. And I was lucky. I went out in midsummer to Norway, Finland, and Sweden.
We have Tor Christensen is watching.
Oh, yeah.
He just commented saying he loves grouse. So,
oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Have I just done a massive advert for grouse?
Quite possible.
Not grouse. Don't drink that. Drink new wave contemporary blend. So I went out to 4 distilleries in 3 countries over 7 days to select a bunch of casks, because Nordic whiskey has been making such a groundswell within the sort of the whiskey community over the last few years. I wanted to try and draw a red thread between some of these distilleries to create something that told the story of sense of place within the Nordics, and I thought that's kind of what it was going to be. And I went to Fedi Distillery off the west coast of Bergen, an island distillery, only 500 people on the island who speak whaling. And every year, the water source for the distillery gets waterlogged by the storm. So it gets waterlogged with seawater. So you get a real minerality and sort of, it's very rugged. You get minerality and saline quality coming out of the whiskey. I went up to Kura Distillery in Finland, which is a rye distillery, and they smoke their whiskey using alderwood that they also use for making saunas. So you get this real sort of like this pine fresh smoke that's like walking into a greenhouse that's on fire. It's mad, but rye as well. So you get the plastic, rubber, spice, sweetness too, and then to High Coast in Sweden, which is very, very north, and it's got really hot summers, really cold winters, and this huge fluctuation means that you get the wood influence on it is so high. And then down to the middle of Sweden to Agitator Distillery that uses vacuum distillation, so it's more like a NASA program than it is a distillery, and that makes a really sort of a very precise, clear, almost sort of like almost a very clean whiskey. Very cool. And I brought them all together to create Friends in the North, and it was way more about the people and the experience of being there that I tried to capture in the glass, as opposed to trying to capture a Nordic flavor that I thought I was going to capture, but it doesn't exist. All the whiskeys are so different, and they're all making it with their own sort of locale that it became this this really hard puzzle put together. So it became a sort of an interpretation of it, as opposed to, it was cool. So Friends in the North will be out in a few weeks, and it's nice. So
buy that.
And I think we sent up a wee miniature to you as well, Mike.
Yes, I think hopefully it arrives very soon. Kat, I think there's one for you as well.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I think you got the broken one.
Oh, did I? That's weird the way that seems to happen.
Yeah, before it's even arrived, I'm pretty sure you were broken.
It's like that whole kind of, Dave Broom wrote the book, it's called Sense of Place, isn't it? He talks about just how a lot of it's just terroir. Like, it's not so much how it was made, it's like what the place makes you feel and how you interpret that through the glass, which I'm a big advocate of. I know a lot of people don't like the word terroir in whiskey, and I don't know why. I just think it's ridiculous. But yeah, no, I kind of get behind that.
So the book Sense of Place is definitely me. I mean, I love it. I listen to it on audiobook to go to bed.
Do you know, I've got it, and I have like lots of little wee sticky notes in it of all my favorite bits and like little bits that I've like underlined that I just thought was beautiful. And then Dave Broom came to visit the distillery, a little while ago. I took my book with me like a geek.
You have to sign it.
I did. I said, "Would you sign my book?" And he's like, "Yeah, of course." Like, but disclaimer, I'm a geek and I have just circled all my favorite bits. Please don't think less of me. He's like, "Fine, just bring me the book."
That's amazing. That's incredible. I mean, the photography in Sense of Place is
it's outstanding.
So Christina Carnahan is the photographer, and I now count her as a friend, you know. But I think, I just love it. It's such a cool book, and I think that in terms of the visual as well, it's just unreal. So
of course,
yeah,
too.
He does, yeah, absolutely.
I started reading it during, not during a Blether, but we were doing our Blethers, and there was about 6 weeks when I said, "Oh, I still haven't finished that book yet," and it was like getting to the point where Kat's like, "Just hurry up and finish the book," and it wasn't because I wasn't enjoying, because I kept going back and rereading bits and try to just totally geek out. That was the same with Dave Stirk's Independent Scotch book. It took me so long to finish it because I kept having to go back, or not having to go back, but kept wanting to go back and try and fully understand everything that's going on. It's not just, but then you get books like, I don't know, like something like Charlie MacLean's Whiskey Stories or something by Robin Lang, they're pretty cool, just like little snippets. And I guess Sense of Place is like that, where you could read a bit. It's not linear. It's not like a story or something where you can just jump in and say, "I want to read about that again." And then you can put it down quite satisfied.
Absolutely.
It's a great, I mean, just reading it is a great experience.
I think for me, I've got a bit of a library up there of various books that I try and pick up when I can, and
I like how you've placed your camera in front of the only chalkboard with any writing on it to make it look like you're insanely busy.
Those are windows. I've just
the windows. Okay,
closed the blinds. Yeah. That's all right.
Okay.
No, they're it does look, but they're blinds. Yeah,
I'll let you off then.
But that's complete gibberish behind me, by the way. It's I was tasting a French whiskey and trying to figure out a combination of incorporating a really cool French whiskey into a blend, but so all I was doing there was just profiling a couple of different blends, but didn't work. It's now part of my Isle of Shite series of whiskies, which are the failed experiments, the ones that did not work.
That's the one that's going to go into Lalique decanter, and you're going to charge like £1.9 million a bottle for.
I reckon. Do you know what I think? I think that I should do that. Just make an undrinkable blend, but charge like £2 million for it, so nobody would ever open it. Nobody can check that it's good. Pretend that it's good. No, we've always had a really we've always had a super open philosophy about how we do things. So we have to buy mature stock, then blend it, then bottle it and put it out. So the actual cost of goods for us is pretty high. So we try and put a low margin on so that we're able to still make it affordable. So I think this is an interesting thing that's happening within the industry, is that there's a de-premiumization happening, and it's quite rapid. So we're seeing with the cost of living crisis at a macro level, people are disengaging from prestige and getting more into experience and again, that quality price ratio. And we want to be part of that. We want, a bottle of Woven might be 50 quid, for a 500 ml, but we know that the margin on that, because what we're putting into it is relatively low, and we're not taking the piss by selling it. And that's always going to be the thing for us, is to try and make the best quality whiskey at a price that is affordable, can be affordable. I don't know how you put it, but we ultimately try not to do a Macallan.
I guess we are seeing it's not just independent bottlers and things who have really focused on single casks, high sherry influence or whatever. We're now seeing them looking at, and quite often they'll take out a grain, which kind of might be 25, 33 years old, but it's sub £100. And people look at that age, look at that price point and say, well, actually, I'm going to take a chance on that.
Yeah.
And they're taking out their own blends now. We see guys like Kenny at Dram taking out the Dumbarton Rock and Lady of the Glen. They've got their own blend. And I guess it's trying to find that balance of something that's really, really good, but rebuyable, and it's not just a one-off. And we're seeing a lot of that coming back in. The guys at Thompson Brother with their blends, at Delphi, it's there's something happening there where the affordability is not overtaking the quality, but like as you said, it's that balance it's moving more from the quality into the price and try to find that something that people are happy with.
I think that's exactly it. I mean, I think that there's a few things going on, aren't there? There's one that right now people are releasing whiskies at 2021 secondary market prices when it was ridiculous. I mean, it was ridiculous. I was looking at Jura. Not my favorite single malt, but I was looking at Jura on a list given by an amazing whiskey broker who we trust and know. But I would have been able to go to Tesco's and buy bottles of older age statement 10-year-old Jura off the shelf, having all of the duties, VAT, and margins built in, disgorge it into an IBC, and it would be cheaper than it was to buy a younger cask.
Really?
Ex-duty, yeah.
That's just incredible, that.
And you know what we don't want to see is, a lot of independent bottlers, maybe I'm tarnishing with I think that independent bottlers are amazing and can be done so well, but I think consumers are getting a little bit burnt by, a 2019 Tullybarden in a red wine cask. Cool, great. Is that £100? Maybe not.
Yeah.
And
if you don't class yourself as an independent bottler.
What's that?
You don't class yourself as an independent bottler.
No, we're blenders.
You're blenders.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I look at a component and try and I think with Woven, it's an interesting one. You've opened up something there. It's an interesting one because if I'm starting a business and I'm doing it, I want to add to the story of it. And I think that to add to the story of whiskey cannot be to rebottle. You have to make something, and I don't distill. So to make something is to blend, and to blend is to create something greater than the sum of its parts. So I take ingredients and I put them together to create a whiskey, and that it might be a footnote on the worst chapter of the middle of the book that nobody looks at, but it adds to the story, and that's really important as a business that we do that. And I think so many of these independent bottlers do it, and they do it amazingly, and they add to the story. But you do see some of the same whiskies coming out from multiple multiple.
There seems to be waves, isn't there? You'll have a wave of Glengarry, just a wave of Ardmore, a wave of Colila.
Yeah.
At the moment, I think Altmore is kind of the one that seems to be on everyone's list.
Is that right?
Yeah. Seeing everyone coming out with an Altmore at the moment. So. which is a great dram. I
Which
love
is
all.
great. And look, I think the distilleries are amazing. I think that the brands are amazing. I think that what's happening is great. I think that consumers want to have the trust, and the trust comes from a couple of sources. And if I'm thinking about this retrospectively or trying to fit thinking into it in sort of speedy time, but you know, if you're a consumer, then you want to be able to. We don't have as much money as we had a couple of years ago, right?
Sure.
Just because of cost of living, and that's across all of us, whether you're a millionaire or not, which I'm sure you both are. But but you know, our money goes a shorter distance, and so there's less ability, there's less desire to gamble on something, and so I think that things like blends are good, and I think that that's going to be the future of the category. Is you're going to see more independent blenders, you're going to see more small scale blenders coming in, because what you can assume, maybe not trust, maybe not guarantee, but what you can assume is that somebody has taken casks and put them together to make something, and it really is greater than the sum of their parts. My blend should be better than the single malt components that I'm buying in.
Yeah, otherwise,
that's the least I can do.
Yeah. I guess. Yeah, and it's the old kind of the orchestra, isn't it? It's like putting together the strings on their own sound better with some drum and some brass all in there, and you bring it all together.
That's what kind of makes the name so perfect as well. So you bring in together all these different elements and weave them together to create something.
Yeah.
And it's like the kind of weaving the old history of blending and the sort of future of blending as well, which I quite like about it. Kind of like that kind of idea of name as well. It just kind of works.
I mean the word woven was really important to us when we sort of came across it, but when we sort of discussed, we had some really shit names, and
go tell us some of the shit names.
No, I can't remember them, to be honest with you, but there were some stonkers in there. But woven just sort of sung to us, and then our
love you.
Yeah,
it's the Singer sewing machine stitch.
Oh my god, that's so clever!
I just thought it was a W and a V.
It's a W and an M, so it's a whiskey maker. I realized that I threw Tully Barden down the path, and to DBH, I love Tully Barden. They make incredible whiskies, and just for the record, absolutely insane. I don't know why I said that, but I meant Distillery X. You know, whatever it is.
There's no distillery you could say in that context that wouldn't.
Yeah. Really didn't mean anything by it. I meant that you, yeah. I mean, I'll stop.
They are a very good whiskey. Just the first one that popped into your head. It could have been any generic whiskey, but
it's a Barden. It was
I've
the
got
first
in front of me that's absolutely singing, and we'll use, and yeah. I mean, unnamed distilleries and all that, but yeah, definitely got some. So apologies to DBH. Tully Barden is quite impressive.
Well, so DBH is also Dominic, who's watching on Facebook and YouTube. So sometimes we get evil Dominic, and sometimes we get the good Dominic, depending on which chat you're getting. So I think YouTube Dominic must be evil Dominic, because he's got like Oscar the Grouch.
I just saw it come up, Dominic, and I went, "Oh man, yeah." I realized what I did, and it's because I'm talking to. It's because I'm blethering. This was a pub. Nobody would notice.
I know. It's the great thing about it is we get you chatting, we get your guard down, we get you a couple of drams. It's exactly like a pub.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, here's you. I mean, Nick's going to be furious when he hears you touting Grouse so well. It's going to be.
Oh well, I think I do think that rising tide lifts all boats, and
I completely agree with that.
Yeah, and whether you get I mean, what did I try the other day? I tried Cutty Sark Prohibition.
Okay.
That was great.
Yeah.
I think it's 55% ABV, something like that, and high grain profile, but it's awesome.
Is that on do you find that in supermarkets, or is that one of those ones you've got to look for? Because I feel like it's a little bit like Teachers. It used to be everywhere. Now you've got to physically look for it online.
Yeah, I found it at a pub. So I don't know where it's sold, but I quickly went. I wrote to the cool guy that I am. I wrote to some friends. I mean, WhatsApped. And I was like,
too late now. You've been too late now. It's out there.
I wasn't writing. I wasn't writing letters, but I was like, man, that was great. And I tried it probably a decade ago, and I tried it again 6 months ago, and I was like, that is really great, very, very good indeed. So yeah, man, it was it was cool. I think absolutely. I don't know where I'm going with that.
I love we haven't got him in the Blether yet. I would love to get Ronnie Cox on the Blether, but some of the stories he has of going over to Mexico and trying to tout Cutty Sark is just incredible, like mafia deals and stuff. It's it's so much fun listening to.
Suitcases of money.
Yeah, like proper old school. It should be made into a movie, just his story.
One of my favorite stories is, I love the Teachers history. I love the whole brand. I love their story. And Adam Teacher, when he took over, because they were really forward-thinking, Teachers brand. They kind of moved away from the whole stag, like you were talking about, the shortbread tin kind of Stags and Highlander branding, and started embracing this kind of fun, modern branding for the time. And then he was one of the first blenders to start trying to travel like a rep, and started traveling the world. So he got on this ship to, I think it was South Africa, but the ship's captain was an alcoholic. So he just kept just not getting out of bed, and he would fall out with people for complaining, and just turn the ship around and start going the opposite way. And then they all complained that they hadn't got Christmas dinner, so he locked them all in the hold. So they finally got to Africa, and because Teachers have got the best archive in the one of the best archives in the industry. They know that he traded whiskey for something like a swan down cloak and a lion skin and stuff. It's just really, really random and cool. I love the idea of this guy just coming back into the port in Aberdeen, dressed head to toe as a sort of swan lion mutant. Sorted Africa out. I just absolutely love it.
Who owns Teachers now?
We do.
Oh.
Yeah, me and Kat. Yeah.
No, not me, Mike. Suntory.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's great. Do you guys have any can you guys do supply on grain and malt? Looking for a friend?
You're asking the wrong person. I'm so low down the tree that I'm not even near the tree yet. But
the tree is a dot to you.
It's so far away. I'm not even sure it's a tree. It might just be a weed on the hill. I don't know.
I love it. I think Teachers is great. I have a bottle of Teachers sort of from the mid 90s. I think I picked it up. I cracked it. I thought it was absolutely stonking. Really great. I don't know what's in it, what was in it, but yeah, I thought it was.
It's one of the last distilleries to move away from direct firing. It's got one of the highest malt contents. But then we've just released a malt with Edgington, so Suntory Edgington kind of hybrid malt called Ardrey, which is the bottle. I don't know where it is, hiding behind my plant, I think. But
behind that tree that you're not on.
Behind the tree that I can't get near. But yeah, it's a really cool. The Teacher story is very, very cool, and Ardmore Distillery is just so beautiful. And
Ardrey is very cool as well.
It is very cool. It's a very, very cool brand. A very, very cool blend.
I'm excited to see it.
Sorry, guys. Can I just jump in because Chamonix Charlie has been watching this evening.
Hi, Charlie.
Hi, Chamonix.
She has to go now, so hopefully she's still on. But I just wanted to say hello. I've seen your comments coming up, and I've been waiting to interject because Charlie's got some exciting news. She's been working with you guys that she announced, which is pretty cool. I think we should get Charlie on as a guest to talk about that in the near
Definitely.
future.
She knows how to get hold of me. Let's get her on. We'll get her.
I hadn't, so I now see it. Yes. Hi. Yeah, we've been working on a secret squirrel project together that we're going to be releasing out in Norway in the coming months. So we've been working for about a year together, I think, near enough, or about 9 months, 10 months, going backs and forwards on a blend, trying to capture some of the rock elements, trying to capture a lot of the sort of the soft fruit and then sugary profile that you can get from some Irish and some American whiskies. And that's going to be really, really cool. So watch this space. I was actually just doing something on that today. And so, yeah, that's going to be released pretty soon. I'm not too sure when exactly, so you'd have to ask Chamonix, but she's one of the coolest people that I know. So
she's nice.
Yeah.
She's very cool. We did say this last time she was on the chat that we need to get her on. But yeah, we'll have to sort that out.
She came on. I think it was during lockdown when one of our first guests. I think she was. She joined in. We do a lot of virtual tasting. We certainly did a lot of virtual tastings as everyone was kind of doing during lockdown. And she did a blind tasting with us, and the pack hadn't arrived to her yet, and she still got more points than anyone else just going off other people's tasting notes. And and I had drip fed clues throughout the night, and she beat half the people in the room. It's pretty incredible.
That's so scary. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me either.
No,
she's so detailed. And I'm there going, maybe we'll put a bit of this in.
Love how brutally honest she is as well. Like, she doesn't hold back at all. She's just like very brutally honest. But I really appreciate that about her too.
I know, and I'm a sensitive guy.
You fucked up my whiskey again. Stop it.
What do you mean they're not all amazing? Stop telling the truth. No, she's great. Love her.
I hope she was still watching. I hope she didn't go off too soon.
Absolutely.
But I'll send her a message and tell her watch the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, tune in at 1 hour 52 minutes, and she'll be able to watch all the praise that we're heaping on her.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. It's funny. I didn't realize everybody's got like these like code names on YouTube. So
yeah,
I didn't realize that Chamonix is. I don't know what word that is, but that word.
Kino got. It looks Kino Norwegian.
Yeah. I hadn't realized that at all. So that's good. Love that.
We there was another couple of questions come in, and I realized we're hitting 2 hours now, which is awesome for us because I love geeking out. Jeremy Watt is asking, I'm going to tie this in with another question you had earlier on. Is there too much competition of small independent bottlers and maybe blenders? So are we hitting a saturated market effectively? Is the competition for casks, is that driving prices up? I believe cask prices are maybe coming down a little bit recently, and competition for shelf space. So I guess what he's asking is it a diluted market now? Has too many people jumped on that bandwagon? Do you think we're going to maybe see a drop off of some guys who thought, much as we did with the gin industry over the last 20 years, we saw so many gins and now they're all dropping off?
I mean, that's good questions, isn't it? All of them. And I think that you can probably answer them in a couple of different ways. And I would definitely preface this with, I don't know. But my interpretation of things are, well, I can tell you about cask prices, first of all. That's something I can talk about because that's something I do every day, which is fine. So the cask prices rose from 2019 to 2020, early 2022 extortionately, almost double. You know, you look at a 4-year-old mainland or Speyside refill hoggy, and you'd be looking at probably $3,000 in 2019, and you're looking at $6,000 or $7,000 in 2022. And so the result of that was that there was a higher perception of, or there was a perception that was higher than the actual value should have been on the whiskey.
Yeah.
For independent bottlers, that was in two ways good and bad. Good because you were able to sell the whiskey that you bought in 2019 for much higher because the cask value was higher, so you were able to realize the new cask value plus your bottling on older stock that you already had in place. It also meant that that when you're buying casks, you're competing with the price, so you're all after the same deals, but you're also competing with what became very, very obviously a bad influence on the industry, which was these cask investment companies that sort of drove prices up because they were buying individual casks for people. And this is a whole different kettle of fish to go into, but you know, for whatever you want to make of it, it built a bubble. That bubble has been is bursting. We're in the process of it, and so over the last 6 months, we've seen cask prices reduce relatively steadily, and that's, I think, from two angles. One, there's a realization that there is quite a whiskey loch in situ, and people are trying to realize they're trying to realize the investment that they put in 2020, 2021, 2022, sort of a 3-4 year cycle. They're now trying to get the money back, so they're putting their casks back into the market. They're unable to get the full value of their cask back, plus the age, so they're dropping the price in order to get cash in, is what I think is happening. And so it's quite good for a blender. I'm pretty happy with it right now because I'm seeing prices come down, and I'm able to speak in a buyer's market and say, hey, no, actually that's too expensive. Are you able to put a deal on that? And instead of just getting the door slammed and no, we've got 6 other buyers, you're getting a bit more nice attention. That's not to say that I mean, I think there's exceptions to everything, right? So that's for some people, not for others, and there's loads of gray areas, and there's lots of there's everything to go into there. So take that as a sort of a relative guide, not the full truth.
Sure.
Independent bottlers, are there too many? In my opinion, there's a lot. You know, I think that probably when we all came into whiskey, there was probably a half dozen, but really just 3 or 4 that you sort of knew about. I mean, it's sort of playing, and then it's kind of been a huge proliferation of that category of independent bottlers, and I think that it's fucking great, honestly, because you're seeing way more interesting whiskies come onto the market. You're seeing different iterations of the same market through different bottlers, and you're seeing how pricing, how strategy, how marketing affects the perception of, you know, if you think about some brands you'd never have heard of until quite recently, but now you look at something like Dalyuen, a great workhorse distillery of Diageo that, you know, until 5 years ago, every thought was just, I mean,
blending.
Hogwash. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But the independent bottlers have built that into a unicorn, and now Dalyuen, you know, a sherried Dalyuen is kind of like, oh wow, I've got that. That's really cool. Yeah. And I think that's great, and that's what independent bottlers have done. will there be a drop off of them? Yes, I sadly think there will be, and not through necessarily bad vibe stuff, but more just because it's a relatively saturated market. Independent bottle shops like yourself are, probably see a lot of independent bottlings come through and sit on the shelf for a while, and things need to move.
Yeah, we're starting to see more of that, where before you buy in a release, or probably a better example is there's independent bottlers who we couldn't get near because they had their core, the guys who'd supported them from the start, and that's who they supply because they sold out everything. We are now seeing them knocking on doors saying, do you want to try some of our stuff? Which is great because it allows us to expand our range, but it obviously throws that instant buy, that kind of FOMO era is over, and people are being a bit more picky.
I think so, and so I think the sad thing is that there are going to be some. I don't think it'll be a ton of the ones that sort of you know really well and hold dear to you, but the ones that sort of that pop up and then sort of just don't appear again, rather than anything too bad. We saw it with gin, and the third part, I can't remember what the third part was. Are we part of that? Maybe I think we're competing for the same space on some shelves. I think that we're not at other times. I think that in the on trade we're relatively stronger than independent bottlers because we've got a core range that we're able to rely on. We have a few blends that we're able to make make again, which means that we're able to get that consistency and get that brand recognition that translates to rate of sale in the on trade and in the off trade, where we're working really hard to sort of understand how we as a contemporary blender can stand out and do it differently, so that we're not classed as an independent bottler, so we're not in a sort of a foxhole with them. Not that's a bad place to be, but we don't want to be in the malt. We don't want to be in a malt category at all. I think that what was a shame for not a shame, that's the wrong word, but what was interesting about Compass Box is that for 20 years they were saying we are as good as a single malt, which is such a weird narrative to have about yourself if you're making kick-ass outstanding blends. And so we want to shout it from the rooftop that we're not as good as a single malt. We're doing it differently, and it should be better.
Different category.
Aye.
Yeah. How many casks would you sit on it that you could go into tomorrow and say, I'm going to make a blend out of this? What's your kind of selection range?
I think we've got about 100 casks right now, of various different things and different levels, and we've got a few IBCs, very sexy 1,000-liter plastic totes of whiskey that are world whiskies. So we're not allowed to store non-Scotch whiskey in oak in Scotland. And you're not allowed to blend it in Scotland either. So we have to do our non-Scotch whiskey in England.
I didn't know that.
You're not even allowed to store it in Scotland.
Yeah, was that? Yeah, you're not allowed to store it in oak if it comes to Scotland. So it has to be in an inert vessel.
That was one of my questions earlier on about if you were had to adhere to any certain rules as a blender, but I think we went past it all. But yeah,
you can't buy something from New Zealand or Sweden, transport over, import
and mature it in Scotland. No,
even though you don't put Scotch on the bottle.
No, you can. No, you can, and you can make it amazing, but it's not called a whiskey in any way, shape, or form. It's a spirit drink.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So the SWA tech files and guidelines are incredible, and they're safeguarding our industry now, and I like it, but we want to push them. But one of them is that you can't. Yeah. So you're not allowed to store in
Surely-
in oak as a maturing whiskey if it's not Scotch in Scotland.
Yeah, but surely that goes for like the guys at Arbiki doing rye. They're not calling it Scotch; they're calling it rye whiskey, but still a whiskey. Or you're buying it from other countries. I don't get, because Scotch Whiskey Association for me protects the term Scotch whiskey. So
the Arbiki rye is classified as a single grain under the SWA Tech files, right? And so therefore that is a Scotch product. It's a Scotch single grain.
Fair point, yeah.
So that's fine. If they, yeah, I mean it's just that. So it's non-Scotch product. So Irish, English, American, Japanese, whatever. You can store it in England and mature it, but you can't do it in Scotland.
Wow.
Yeah. It's just a very strange. And also, I can't transport Scotch to England for blending in wood. It has to go in plastic or tank. Yeah.
Yeah. I get that. It's just that whiskey is such a, Scotch is one level of whiskey.
Yeah.
Scotch is one category. So why can't you still call it whiskey?
There's something illicit about that. I just imagine you guys like sneaking over the border in cloaks, with cauldrons at nighttime, mixing up your foreign concoctions and taking it back over to Scotland.
I wish instead we get on a train to Kent.
It's not as romantic, to be fair.
No, it's
not. Yeah, no. So we work with an amazing distillery down in Kent called Copper Rivet, and a guy called Abbey, who does our non-Scotch blending for us, and he's awesome. And we're actually going to be making an English blend actually. So we're working with White Peak Distillery, Fielden Distillery, Cotswolds Distillery, Adnams, Cooper King, and Copper Rivet to create an English blend that I've got to say, man, I mean, it's so good. The grain that we're using is from Adnams, and it's very, very underrated. That's some of it there. But first fill, the wood that they're using is crazy good, very undervalued. Please keep selling me it. But yeah, it was good. Sorry, yeah. Anyway, we're doing lots of things.
I haven't played around with any English whiskey yet, but
Scott Matheson's got a great idea. Just buy a farm that straddles the border.
Scott Matheson, don't know who you are, but could you please buy a farm that straddles the border and then just have a blending warehouse just on the border? I've been looking at. I was looking at idly, like we don't have the. It would be a big investment that we can't do, right? But to essentially build like a blending facility on the border for non-Scotch blends. So I think there'd be a market for it. Well, we'd definitely do it. We'd definitely be the market for it. But
you don't build it in like Berwick because it's something.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I live in North Berwick pretty much, or the village next to it. So that'd be great. It'd be 45 minutes down the road in England. Off I go. But there's not. There's a few in like Yorkshire and stuff, which is great. And so yeah, but that's my future business plan is to build like a nondescript industrial unit on the border.
Just like a really long building where all the warehousing is on like the Scotland side and like all the sort of blendings on the England side. I love that idea.
Yeah, exactly.
You'd have to check your passport halfway through, like as you're going from one end of the building to the other, just like a passport check in the middle.
I think that'd be it. So no, it's exciting. Like we have an evolving sort of list of ideas that we want to do, and it's kind of ever changing and ever growing. So I really, really believe that blending is the sort of the future of moving the category.
I think you guys are like sort of the start at the forefront of that as well, because there's not that many, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't feel like there's a lot of new blenders out there. I think like a lot of independent bottlers have done a blend, and then we're talking about how, you know, we were still seeing who do we say it was, Compass Box, like as the new guys, but like other than that, like I feel like maybe you guys like the sort of the start of that new wave, maybe.
Oh, I hope so, Kat. That'd be nice.
There's Ali at Turntable is doing his blended stuff, and he's doing some really good stuff. But yeah, I think, and we still struggle. You know, we're in a retail shop that we struggle with blends of any sort until you mention maybe what's in it. If you know for a fact there's a certain distillery or the components of it, then the malt guys could, and I do think there's this reluctance for people to. I'm going to call it a step down. I know it's not, but from their pedestals, like, well, okay, I'll try a blend, and that's purely that's purely a marketing thing. It's purely a status thing. I know I struggled a little bit, and we all joke, you know, during any kind of whiskey tasting, and maybe it is something that we have to stop in the industry saying, you know, blends are for palate cleansers and things like that. You know, you get the odd joke like this coming up, but you know, maybe we need to really stop that and make people more comfortable in trying a blend.
I mean, I think that what we're doing is we're trying to turn a tanker, right? It takes a long time.
Yeah.
And the tanker was moved from blends to single malts over a very long time.
Yeah.
And now we're trying to turn it the other way, which is very difficult. But it's a worthwhile thing to do. So whilst I understand and I know and I appreciate that it is a challenge to sell a blend in your amazing shop because you're surrounded by the world's best single malts all around you, and the price of them is relatively affordable for a lot of them, right? You know, I mean, you're able to see this now, and so it's a tough thing to say, hey, you got to try this blend, because they hear that word and they say, well, I know that I don't like that word.
Yeah.
But it's also, and this is where I'm putting it a little bit back onto you, is that that's the game. Like that's the request that you know. I'm not saying you might come off this call and be like, fucking hell, Woven's shit, blends are shit, I hate Pete, I don't want to do it. but my genuine ask is that you do fight the good fight, and you do try and turn the occasional customer and say, hey, actually, like, you've come in for this, but would you consider something like that? And give them a try if you can. We'll send you up some sample stock. But
we'd certainly be fighting the good fight on the Blether. As I said, a good number of our previous guests have been blenders or have done blending. And it's always, you know, I think what we have, and we're not a big online presence. We have online, but our shop isn't a tourist route. We rely a lot on local customs, and a lot of that I would say probably as high as 60% of our customers are buying gifts for someone else.
Right. Aye.
And they come in, oh, I'm buying a gift. It's a 40th birthday. They like Speyside single malt. And that's what they ask for, because that's what they've been told. And trying to get them to try something off of that is very difficult, because it's not their fault. It's not. No, I'm not calling out a customer. It's just that naivety is that's what they've been told, and they don't want to deviate from that. So it just means that there's a very small percentage of our customer base that we can tap into.
Absolutely, and I get that. I mean, maybe this is a question that
I'm not asking you for the
no,
cure.
You're not going to come up with that massive recipe. It's definitely something that we face a lot, and the way that our business works is that I put the whiskies together. Duncan markets it, and Nick is the commercial and managing director. So he's sort of the business brain behind it. And so I don't get to see too many of the challenges of saying, how do we change that? What are the mechanics to actually change that direction? They need to be there. We need to discover what they are, and we need to implement them. but they need to exist. And I think that what I'd be really keen to do is probably offline is to get into that. Like, let's turn you into the fucking place that sells blends. That's going to be a good challenge.
It would be awesome. It really would be, and it maybe is. There's maybe something we can do on the website that directs people directly to blends, because I don't think we have that.
Blends are back. Tell all your friends. There's a revolution.
I think
there's a revolution.
Was it Jeff Whiskey had a comment saying blends Back to the Future?
Yeah.
Yes. I love that.
Yeah, we'll get that on a t-shirt. Let's get that added to the merch, Mike.
Add it to the merch. Yeah. You may have seen on our Instagram that the new logo is in development.
It is. Yeah,
we're getting there. And I was going to say something there. Oh, and we have Nick coming up to the shop to do a tasting in-house in December. So guys, if you want to get in and taste some Woven whiskies, get on the website, come into the shop. He's up, I think it's the 7th of December, first Saturday in December. We're going to be doing a barrel top in the shop, and also that's going to be followed by a ticketed event as well. So that's going to be really cool. Very much looking forward to that. Nick's
the much more eloquent, better looking, and smarter one of us. So you're going to get the good one there.
And he's got the New Zealand accent.
I've literally written down some of your quotes. It's going to go in my weirdo journal. So there you go.
Not the Tully Barden one.
No, not that one. It's fine. We'll edit that bit out. We'll dub over it.
Yeah, please do. I feel terrible.
It's fine. Don't worry about it. I mean, you're lucky that I'm not drinking. Usually most weeks I say something absolutely ridiculous or obscene or a mixture of both, so you're fine.
Well, yeah.
Good.
I think
we're going to lose. We're going to lose half the audience to VPub and what's it called, Mike? Bar Flat.
The Aquavitae. Yeah. I think what Serge on is, I guess, tonight. So
we're the warm-up act for Aquavitae, so everybody starts tailing off and disappearing off to that. They go for a pee and a yeah, I know, but it's all good. There's room for us all.
Before we lose everyone, Kat, who's next week's guest?
Well, funnily enough, we've actually spoken about him quite a bit tonight. We've got Dave Broom on next week, which I'm super excited about.
It's going to be awesome.
Give him a virtual cuddle for me.
I will do, definitely.
I am very, very much looking forward to that. I haven't spoken to Dave, and I've spoken to him once, and I haven't had the courage to speak to him again because I kind of told him that his books were and I meant it in a compliment. I told him his books were very simple and really easy. He made things really easy for people to understand. And he just kind of looked at me as if, right, okay. Yeah. And do you know how you realize you said something, you try and correct it, but you just make it worse?
Well, I mentioned it to him and he didn't even remember that. So, and he did say that he wouldn't have taken it.
It was at the end of a whiskey dinner. So
I think you've been holding on to that for so long. I think you just need to, Queen Elsa, just let it go. Let it go.
But I love what he's doing for the industry in terms of his books and his videos, and he's got his own film out now, and yeah, it's going to be so cool next week. And I know he's a big fan of you guys, and he kind of champions Woven.
Yeah, he's
been as a pioneer for blends. He's a big fan of blends as well.
He means more than he would ever. Definitely, big fan of Dave. He's been an inspiration and a real North Star for what we want to achieve in terms of his passion, his niceness, and his understanding of the the category. So yeah, not to blow smoke. I wouldn't say it to his face. I would. Every time I see him, it's so bad. Fanboy Pete.
Yeah, I think I'm going to try and avoid being fangirl cat next week, but I'll probably be holding up his book. Look how much I love you.
No, do it, because he reacts so nicely to it. The nicest guy in whiskey, definitely.
It is, yeah. His
Awesome.
new book's awesome as well. So yeah, that's who we've got on next week. And I actually remember who we've got on next week, Mike. For once, you asked me at the end of the night, who do I have on next week? And I've got an answer for you. I remember.
That's great. Peter, it's been an absolute pleasure having you. We have talked a lot of geek. We haven't talked as much nonsense as we normally do, which is a testament to you and your knowledge.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine.
We've got so many great comments coming in. Definitely need to try Woven. That's got Dutch Jura. Peter's been great. We'll need to try Woven. So that's what we love to see, this kind of comments coming back.
There's been some really good chats. It's hard to keep up with it because it's been so good, but yeah, everything's really positive towards you and Woven. So yeah, you've got some new fans and some existing fans.
Oh, well, like, genuinely, this has been so much fun. I loved it, and this is so cool you guys are doing it. So
you're welcome
thank you.
Whenever you like. You're
bottom of my heart, really mean it.
Thank you very much.
Being there.
And look out for Woven on the Voodoo Whiskey Shop shelves within the week.
Awesome.
Great.
So awesome. Thanks again, Pierre. Thanks, guys at home. I will be jumping on the V pub very shortly. I'm going to have to grab some tea first, but I will see you there if you're on. And guys, we'll say Slanjura, have a great weekend, and see you soon.
Yep. See you next time.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.